Yeah, I want to stay in the zone.
Okay, welcome back everybody to the Connection Project. Sally here, and I am so excited today with my guest who is another nurse coach and an amazing coach and healer, I would say, in my opinion, helping women with their confidence and so much more than that. Because she's diving deep as I love to do, and that's what she's doing in her practice, and she has amazing results. And so let me just introduce her, and then I'll let everybody know how we met. So today I'm lucky to have Amy Colombo with me. She is a confidence life coach, a registered nurse, and a single mom to 3 boys. She utilized the pause of the pandemic to dive deep into her own healing of her self-sabotaging patterns, which stemmed from childhood trauma, depression, and rage. This changed her life and led her to her purpose and calling. She has since resigned from her 23-year career in nursing and now coaches people pleasers, perfectionists, and high achievers, and helps them break free of their self-sabotaging patterns and live a life of confidence and courage. Amy's gift in guiding her clients deeply to their own power creates a profound experience of transformation like no other. And so I am excited to talk to Amy today because we do um, some similar work, and we love to take our clients deep because we have, I think she would agree, have maybe it's not always been an easy journey, but we love to go deep and really love to find this different path that we've been able to live our lives through. And so how I met Amy was we were in actually met on a nurse coaching retreat. We drove together, didn't really know her that well. We saw we were doing some similar things. And then we really reconnected on another retreat in Hawaii where I felt, got to know each other on a very different level. And I think for me anyway, had a whole different understanding of Amy and felt an instant connection that I felt really good about. And I think that we have some similar patterns. We might be a little similar, maybe she'll disagree, but working on some of our own stuff and then taking our clients to those places. And so Amy is here with me today, and we are going to be talking all things confidence and courage and people pleasing, and how she's going to take us through her story of rage and how she was, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but disconnected and having all these feelings. And now she's living a life that she probably, I've heard her say, never really dreamt that would be possible for her. And it is a definite beautiful story. And so I felt really pulled to bring her here today to talk about that and let us know what she's doing. And then we'll talk all things connection and how she's reconnected in so many ways to herself, her kids, her life. And so, yeah, thanks, Amy, for coming on today and welcome.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, Sally. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So, yeah, I felt like, just to keep it real, I felt like in Hawaii, like we met each other in wherever we were, Tennessee. Where were we? I don't even remember anymore. Tennessee, Kentucky. I don't even know. Where were we? We were
We
at
were
that
in
retreat.
Tennessee.
Tennessee, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we kinda got to know each other a teeny bit, but I wouldn't say, like, got to know each other. And then I felt like in Hawaii, I was actually very nervous about going, and all the things were coming up for me, and I really felt like we connected. I felt anyway, we connected in Hawaii on a level that I wasn't really expecting, and it was, um very pleasantly surprising for me, let's put it that way. And,
Mhm.
yeah, we've never talked about this, but hey, I'm all about vulnerability. So, I felt very connected in that moment, and I was, like, really surprised and kinda happy with that, help me settle some of my own internal shit that was going on in myself. So, and again, Amy and I have never talked about that, but yeah, I'm like, "Oh, what the heck, bring it up today." And yeah, and then we've just stayed in touch, and I watch what she's doing, and it's really she's creating such a connection within the nurse coaching community and with her clients, and she's doing the thing, and she's working freaking hard, and it seems like it's paying off for her. And she's living a whole different life than she was in the hospital, and I have been loving watching her journey. And so yeah, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for all of that. That just sounds so beautiful. I'm just grateful,
Mm,
grateful for you to share all that. And I do want to just touch on in Hawaii, we did connect because we were facilitators, right? First. So we kind of connected at that level. But then, I will just say I had a really amazing experience being brought through the journeys that you were doing as the facilitator, that breath work session, the Reiki. I was really I was able to get so much out of that retreat. Meanwhile, I had held 3 spaces for the women, so there was a lot of pressure just for me in general internally to like hold that space. But when I got to be in the space and be brought through the process with you, it was transformative. I was able to go
mm.
so deep, and that doesn't happen with everybody. I've been through things like that. So it was really powerful for me to experience some of your medicine and to see just how I think I really respected your skill level and your ability to hold that space. And then we did, right? Like we connected and like we hung out, we went zip lining and like you faced a fear and like I tapped with you. Like, it was a really amazing retreat. I did leave there like missing you and being like, I know I want to stay connected to this woman.
Yeah, and I can say for myself, I didn't go in with that expectation, and then so it was so when I say pleasant, it was so like sometimes you find these gifts that you weren't even looking for. And so I'll just share a quick story before Amy gets into her story, but as much as that she's just said those beautiful things about me and my medicine, her medicine was just as beautiful because I have a extreme fear of heights. And, but of course, in my sum of unresolved people pleasing, wanting to be part of the group, I decided that I should go ziplining with them. And we got to the point of going to ziplining, and that's still stuff like this. We talk a lot on this podcast about connection and healing, but I still have shit that I have not resolved. And so I have a severe fear of heights, but yeah, I wanted to be part of like the group and what people were doing. Sometimes I still have that thing. And ziplining was one of the things they were doing. And then I got to the day and I was like, what the F am I even thinking? I am so afraid of heights. I was literally having a panic attack in the car on the way over there. And so Amy pulled out her toolbox of tapping skills. Because that's one of the things I'm sure she'll talk about today. And I have tapped a little bit, but hadn't really been that involved in tapping. And yeah, I surrendered and I trusted, and she tapped me through in the car, and everybody in the car tapped with us, which was really, really like comforting to me. And then we got to the zip line, and I guess it would probably too bad we don't have a video. But we were, harnessing up and we were still tapping in the middle of this it's a zip lining place, and I'm laughing because it's like it kind of is a really beautiful memory, and everybody tapped. It's like no one in the group was like, "Oh god, like she's holding us back." I mean, it was so like loving, and Amy brought that piece with the tapping, and then it was so interesting, right? Because the guy that was with us was like, "Oh, my mom does my mom does the tapping. My mom has me
Yes.
do that when I'm anxious." So it just was like this really serendipitous moment, and I was able to zip line and I had an amazing time. Was I still a teeny bit afraid? Yeah, but I did the zip lining. I didn't have that like freeze, um, that completely disassociated fear that I have with heights, which is really, really a strong fear of mine. And I had a great day. And so she brought her magic, and it was really nice in that way as we connected on that trip. And that's why I say for me, it was a bit of a gift that I wasn't really going there looking for. And I felt the same way when I left. Like I want to stay connected to this person and her medicine because we have a lot of similarities and we have these gifts that are similar but different in the most beautiful way. So yeah, I wasn't planning on sharing that story, but it was a great
Mm.
story. And yeah, she tapped me right through. I tell everybody about that because I still can't believe that I was able to tap through that. Just like I'm amazed when I take people through breath work and they have these amazing experiences. I still am amazed at like when I'm taking through this experience with a different holistic modality. And that just goes to talk about so many holistic modalities that are out there that people don't even know about. So anyway, I'll stop with that. But yeah, so that was part of our
Mm,
Hawaii beautiful, magical gifts I think that we both probably received that we weren't expecting. So yeah, thanks for
yeah.
that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. That was beautiful. That was a beautiful experience for me, even as a practitioner, to be able to um use a tool when we most need it, right? Like
Yeah.
when else could you say, like when you're experiencing the 10 out of 10 fear, like in that moment, we were able to use one of our tools. And
Yeah.
I remember I asked you and you said it came down to like a 6 or a 7, which was just enough, right? And
Mhm.
that's a big deal when you are a 10 out of 10 in panic attack
Oh
mode.
yeah.
It's just enough for you to be able to move through the fear. So that was even awesome for me as a practitioner to
Yeah.
see how it helped.
I can still think about the fear in the car, like, why would I say I would do this? Like, this is so crazy just because I didn't wanna be left out. Like, I still have some of those moments, I'll be honest about that, and I think all of us have, like, these moments. They're always different, but for me, sometimes I don't wanna be left out, and I kinda wanted to go ziplining, I, like, always think about it, but then when I got down to it, I was like, "No way." I was literally in the car thinking, "I cannot do this," and how embarrassing, and all this stuff that happens, all the shame and the guilt, and yeah, and through the tapping, I was able to get on that platform. Was I a little nervous to step off? Was I flipping over like maybe some of my counterparts? Not so much, but it was okay. I was okay with like where I was able to go with it, which is a great thing for us even in our coaching world, right? I was okay with where I was in the moment, in the present, and I didn't shame myself about what I wasn't able to achieve because I was able to achieve the fact that I could step off of those platforms after your tools with tapping and the support of you and the other women that were there with us was really a magical moment that I honestly bring up to clients. I bring up, yeah, because these tools are amazing anyway. Again,
Mm,
wasn't even thinking about talking about all this, but yeah, that's why I like it to keep it organic because I think this story is profound on how we connected and how you brought your tools to me. None of that was planned. None of
yeah.
and so we both left with a gift that we weren't expecting, which is always
Yeah, that was just a beautiful experience. And, in your theme of connection, just thinking of us all being there with you in the car, there was something to the other women tapping.
Mhm.
Like there was just, it was like this whole thing. That trip was a magical trip.
Yeah, I have goosebumps thinking about it, even us as I'm laughing about tapping in the middle of the zip line place, but there was almost no embarrassment, no shame. It was just like everybody just, like, rallied and was like, "Yeah, we're all doing this," like and even me who sometimes will still create that, like, "Oh, I don't wanna, like, embarrass myself." It was just like it wasn't even a thought, we just did it, and then it was so beautiful because when the this most amazing zipline guy that worked there, a young kid, like, when he said that to us, he seemed like we almost gave him permission that his mom has him do this when he's anxious, and I almost felt from him this energy of, like, "Oh, this is, like, so okay that my mom tells me to do this when I'm anxious because all these women are doing it." I don't know, I felt like some weird, beautiful energy from him too, and I just think all of it was really, really amazing, so, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, so good.
yeah. So, that's kinda for everybody listening, that's kinda how we really created this relationship, and then Amy is doing all this confidence coaching, and she's gonna talk about, like, her story and where she came from and where she is now, so let her talk instead of me.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Sally. And I will just go back a little bit to I'm 46 and I've been in business now 3 years, which is really my passion, my dream. And I went on a healing journey. It really, really started, I would say, the big piece of it back in 2019. And I had always been interested in personal development. It was something that always interested me. It was always like a sort of like a little hobby, but it was always that thing that like I'd read a book or like watch the movie The Secret or like learn this thing and I do it and it would work for a week and then just like it wouldn't. And then I just go back to my normal self as I
Mhm.
saw it. And my normal self was honestly, when I look back now, realizing like I was just skating by. Like I was just trying to get through each day, without being pissed off. I think that's how you and I connect a little on that kind of like that anger piece that we
Yeah.
both carried. Like I was just chronically annoyed and angry and always trying not to let people see like my faces, like I'd be nice to your face, but then behind your back, I'd be like, a whole nother way. I just had this chronic, like, sort of anger,
Mhm.
like annoyance. And it really came to a head in 2019 when I had gotten rid of like my ex-boyfriend and he left and I thought like he was the main problem. And then got rid of my mother. She had lived with me for 8 years. I thought she was the problem and it was just me and my kids. And I had this fit of rage with my then 3-year-old. And that was really the piece that just like it almost hit me over the head like a hammer. Like, this is in you. This is you. This is nobody else. This is inside of you. And I had been to therapists, my whole life, but I had gone in that time and finally said, I need to dive into this rage. Like it's inside me. I'd never even said that word before,
Mhm.
And she told me like rage comes from the past. And we talked a little bit about my past, which I had never really wanted to go there before. And she confirmed for me in that day that I did have a childhood trauma experience. And I still was like even a little skeptical,
Mhm.
I really was truly, like one of those victims that didn't know they were a victim now that I'm looking back. Um, but what really solidified it for me was she told me that day, like, Amy, you're in good hands. I'm a trauma specialist. This is what I do. It was traditional talk therapy, but she was like, you don't have to prove this to me. I believe you. And Sally, I'll just say there was a little girl inside me that was gaslighted and angry and so unbelieved, like, and so angry that she just like touched with those words. Like those words were the thing that shifted me in that moment. And I almost feel like it was instant where I became the victim to the survivor, you know?
Mm.
And my journey started from there, but it really, really took her to say, I believe you. If you were to ask me like the most beneficial thing my therapist provided for me, it was those words of I believe you because nobody ever believed me. I actually sort of did the opposite. Like, a lot of kids keep it to themselves. They don't talk about it and they're like hush hush. But I wasn't. I was this big loudmouth kid. And I was like telling everybody what was happening. And it was just falling on deaf ears.
Right.
So that was the piece that really shifted everything for me.
Did you find that, because you didn't feel, really heard or believed, do you feel like in your life prior to that, in your adult life, you were a bit of an over explainer?
Mm, yeah, I love that. Not quite an over explainer, but I would just kind of more like keep quiet. And it's interesting you say that because I coach so many over explainers, and I will point it out to them. I will actually point it out to them very lovingly. Like, hey, you see how you're trying to like prove to me,
Mhm.
that you don't have to prove to me. Um, but yeah, I think it's interesting as I say no, I do tend to talk a lot, and I think some people would say that I tend to have, you know, over explain things, but I try not to now. I think what I would do is I would just try to keep quiet before. I was more of like a hider, like hiding in plain sight is how I saw myself. Like I would
Yeah.
just try to stay quiet and not make any waves. Um, and just sort of be that like quiet person in the room, but just like holding a lot inside.
Yeah, that's interesting because you just said that you would be the loud one, but then in certain instances, so I just kind of wanted to point that out for anyone listening today, because what we're talking about is when, because I happen to be an over explainer. And I still have to really catch myself with that. Um, and sometimes we don't know we're doing that, or if you weren't the over explainer, but this is what Amy's going to be talking about. And what we're talking about is, old trauma. Like this is old stuff that then shows up in our day to day. And because if you didn't feel heard or believed, you tend to Even if it's like the smallest thing, like I went to the store to get milk. No, I really went to the store to get milk. And yeah, I saw someone like that can turn into like a whole thing. And people sometimes look at you like, what? Okay, yeah, you went to the store to get milk. But we can tend to get so over, because we never feel believed about anything. But anyway, I didn't mean to stop you there, but I think it's like important for
Yeah.
people to understand like these are things that happen. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely got to a point where I was just like, I'm better off not speaking because no one's gonna like really
Mhm.
listen to me anyway.
Yeah.
I want to just say from that moment of finally diving into the rage and the anger, because up until then, Sally, like was even on antidepressants and I would go to the doctor. The doctor asked me, like, what was my predominating emotion that I was in? And I said, it's anger. It doesn't matter what happened. Like I see other people, things happen. They get sad, they get mad, they get disappointed, they get like all this range of emotions, but not me. Doesn't matter what's happening. I just get angry about it. So I did realize I was sort of stuck. And now I've come to learn that we all tend to get stuck in one predominating emotion and how anger is actually extremely protective. When I dove into it, when I gave myself permission to dive into it, I'll never forget because when I was in the therapy container working through my childhood trauma, it was re-traumatizing me, like, it was re-triggering me, and I needed other modalities to get in the body because that was the piece that was missing. I did this mindful practice where he actually had you drop into the emotion that you don't like feeling, and I had, like, never done that, like, never meditated on my anger, and when I dropped into it, I'll never forget that first day. It was life-changing because I cried myself to sleep. What was underneath all the anger and rage, Sally, was just shame. It was like shame on top of shame on top of shame that I just had. And I could not believe it. It was such a discovery that this anger was protecting me from these vulnerable, vulnerable
Mhm.
emotions that just were so unsafe for me to show or feel. And I remember I cried myself to sleep that night and woke up thinking I was going to feel like terrible, right? Because, oh my God, I just cried myself to sleep and I focused in on my anger and my shame, but I didn't. I actually felt like neutral, like sort of like I felt okay. I didn't feel happy and great. I just felt neutral. And I remember even just dropping into the feeling of like neutrality in my body and being like, okay, like I don't even know what I think of this,
I
because it's
know.
not it's not like good, but it's not bad either. Like what is this neutral feeling in my body like, right? Like I
Right.
just created some space and yeah, that was just really eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I really like that you brought that up because I think sometimes we think of neutrality as boring. And when I talk to clients about that, like it was so different, right? To me, it's almost like not being like I think about back to Hawaii, like not jumping over the waves in this joyous, like fun and frivolity of like, woo, because that's fun to do. And it's not struggling underneath the waves. It's like laying on top and floating to me is what that neutrality can be. And when you start to connect with your emotions and you start to, like you say, master your emotions and connect and really understand, and I'm sure you're going to get more into that. To me, it's like that, like just floating on top of the water. And it's just that neutral space that I used to think, and I don't even know if other people think that, but when I was first learning about neutrality, I was like, well, this sounds boring, right? I just want to be up, but it's that nice place that you're not so up and you're not so down. You're in this like space that like, hmm, that just happened and you're not numb. It's just a different feeling of like, that used to send me into a 3-day rage. And now, oh, my husband's not going to be home for dinner tonight. And I really needed him home for this thing and nobody's going to die and my night goes on and my energy is all saved and I'm not like being numb from that. It's a very different feeling and when you start to embrace it, I feel like for me it was a really beautiful feeling and very different. So I love that you talked about that.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I had to learn about neutrality because I believe that when we're not in touch and in tune with our emotions and we're in that chronic perpetual state of anger,
Mm.
we have this false belief that we're supposed to be happy. And it even causes more shame because we're
God.
not even not happy. We're like pissed off all the time and angry, like, right? And, but then you'll have those days where you'll feel good and you'll feel happy, and then they go away. And then you again think something's
Wrong.
wrong with me because I can't hold that state. So when I learned, and again, my therapist had to share that, like, you're not supposed to be walking around at a 10 all the time, Amy. And I was like, but aren't I? And she was like, no, like if you're a 5, like you're good. And she kind of planted that seed. And then through me experiencing it in my own body, I started recognizing it then. I started recognizing, oh, this is what it feels like to be okay, just to be neutral, to have some space. And like that's just okay, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It was a big learning lesson for me too.
Mm,
And it took me a little while to be hit over the head with that. Yeah, because we're always
yeah.
chasing that thing, right? We're chasing like that so and so, and especially with social media and things now, like, oh, they're killing it, or they're happy all the time, or they have this. And so we are chasing always that thing, and then we put ourselves into this shame spiral or whatever we're trying to achieve. And it is a very different feeling with neutrality because it's just you're just okay, and okay is okay. Like okay is okay. Like it's okay to just be okay and be having like a very basic good day. Everything doesn't have to be a 10 like she said. And so that was very eye-opening for me on my journey also.
Yeah. And it's even okay, right? And then there's it's okay to not be okay. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean I'm broken because
Right.
that was a common thread for me, always believing that I was broken, that there was something terribly wrong with me, and that I was just, skating by and really fooling everybody. Now that I'm a confidence coach and I know so much about imposter syndrome, it's so interesting to really look back and see how being stuck in that perpetual state of anger, and which is really by the way, this is crazy too, Sally, is what you actually are, that big angry person that looks like she's just so angry and mad and like big, actually feels like a victim at her core. Like,
Hmm.
to find that out, that I was actually walking around, the thing I would say is like, I'm not a victim. Don't feel sorry for me. Right. Like so
Yeah.
angry. God forbid anybody ever felt sorry for me. That was like the last thing I wanted. But to understand that anger was coming from, there was a
Yep.
victim inside of me that I wasn't even acknowledging, right? I was just
No.
shaming her into this like shadow inside of myself. That was a huge, huge discovery, to really let that victim come up and really go back to when I was a victim and empathize with her and realize like, wow, she did have it tough. And now I'm here for her. I can let her emotionally express, and just through that grieving process, going back and being, and then realizing that I did have legitimate anger, like understanding why I
Mhm.
had so much anger. It made sense all of a sudden, not even shaming the anger, letting myself feel all the shit, letting myself take space from my mother while I was healing, not want anything to do with her for a little bit, letting myself be angry with my whole family, that didn't do anything about it. Just letting myself have all the emotions.
Yep.
But the key is in the safety, right, of my own home, with myself, with my therapist, with whom my few friends I chose to speak about it with. It is safe to express anger. You can express anger safely in a safe container. I was just so afraid because what brought me to my rock bottom moment was I had projected it out on like the most innocent little thing in front of me. And that really scared me. But I have since learned how to be with my anger, how to say all this nasty crap in my head while I'm tapping and get it out safely with no one else around to like hear it but me, you
Yeah.
know? It's so interesting too when you learn that your fear being vulnerable out there really starts with you becoming connected and vulnerable with yourself, right?
Right.
It's really us that we fear the most, our own judgments of
Yeah,
ourselves.
yeah, we're so much more judgmental. I was saying to I did a breath work this morning and with a couple ladies, and I was saying to them that I'm in this like a community mastermind of entrepreneurs in my community, and so connecting more with my own community. And so we were doing this exercise in a financial retreat Wednesday, and it was two, but we were doing some fun things because it was a money retreat, which is kind of ugh,
Mm.
but it was good. It was really good. But she did two truths and a lie, and so it's always funny how people perceive you, because I was saying my two truths and a lie, and I was talking about my fear of spiders, and then I said I swam with sharks, and I said something else. And the women that I don't know that well, because it's a fairly new thing I'm doing, is they were saying the one girl was like, "Oh, you're a badass, so I don't think you're afraid of spiders." And I was like, "Is that how she sees me?" Because I am like petrified of spiders. But it's so funny. I kind of was thinking about that, like how we're perceived, and then we are our own worst enemies. I 100% agree with that on how we, I was very defensive and I always felt disrespected. And I never realized how much I said that to my husband, pointed it out to me. And then when I started my healing journey, then he brought it back around. And I used to get so mad when he would say it, but I would feel disrespected at work. I would feel disrespected by him. I'd feel disrespected by my kids. And then I would get angry. And that was like definitely my flavor. And it's so funny. I mean, not funny, but to look back at it now and just to see where that was coming from once I started my healing. And there is another way um, to live our lives. And it is, it can be really beautiful, as your story is.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So what do you think was when you started finding that you could express your anger? I yell in the car now. I share that with everybody because I had a really closed throat chakra, which people would say, "Really?" But I could talk, kind of like you were saying, like I can talk, but when it was coming to express my own like really deep things, I wouldn't always do that. I would kind of chameleon into what people needed me to be, or I wouldn't really express my own confident thoughts, right? Which is what you're working with women on. And I realized that I was in an embodiment workshop and I was so not connected to my female embodiment. And then we were doing this like singing and talking and or yelling. And I was like, I couldn't even get anything out. And I was like, oh my God, this is so weird. And so then I started doing these things like little somatic practices, and I yell in my car now. And it like changed something. It like literally changed something that I feel like I can do that now and be heard in a different way. And it's not in an angry way, it's in a self-contained in my car way. And I do it not only when I'm mad, I do it just to do it. And for me, it was helpful to me. It like opened something up. And it's so crazy, these different things that happen. And I know with the tapping with you, when I had that fear of heights, the tapping, because I was able in the tapping, and maybe you could talk a little bit about that, to express my doubts and fears and shame around not being able to do this and how afraid I was. I was like a 6-year-old kid in that car that day. Um, so afraid of like even expressing how afraid I was because I was embarrassed and all the things. And the tapping allowed me to express those things and then flip the script and talk about how empowered I was. And it really was pretty crazy and magical. So yeah,
Yeah.
if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, what I want to say is the 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 healing and the transformative piece that I think we're missing is whenever we're suffering in some kind of capacity, there is a resistance of some kind coming in. So whether that's a judgment, right?
Hmm.
Whether that is a judgment of the emotion that you're feeling. Because what's interesting is it's not the emotion that's a problem. We blame the emotion. Yeah, the
Right.
emotion is our problem. It's actually the judgment of it. It's when that mind comes in and starts trying to blame, shame, criticize because it just wants to fix the problem. It just wants you to not feel that emotion anymore. But when you back it up, my favorite question to ask I know we all have our little favorite things that just work for us, but whenever I find myself getting angry and like I'll know I'm angry when I start cursing, Sally. Like when I start, like if I'm in the kitchen doing like getting the kids ready for school and like I start cursing, that's my trigger that I'm angry because my anger comes out through cursing. I will just put my hand on heart, take a deep breath in and say, okay, what's the emotion that we can't bear to feel right now in this moment? And it's so funny, Sally, because it's so simple. It's like frustration. You're frustrated. Like Jackson's on the floor having a tantrum. We have 5 minutes to get to school. The kitchen's a mess. Your son didn't do the dishes last night. We're frustrated, right?
Mhm,
But it's like, yeah, yeah, hello, I'm frustrated. But when I actually say that, give it a name and just say, we're frustrated. And then I breathe in and say, okay, well, this is frustrating. Yeah, it makes sense you're frustrated,
right,
right? Like
right.
that's just what I say to myself. Of course you're frustrated. And right there, Sally, I just did this. I'll cry. Like the tears come out and then it is like, whoa, it's like, I swear, it's almost like magic sometimes. Sometimes it's that easy. And then I can just move through my day and say, okay, we're going to do the best we can. We're going to get him to school. It's okay if he's late. That's the worst thing that can happen. But what I find is once you give yourself permission to have the emotion that the brain, that inner critic hates feeling, it
Mhm,
hates being disappointed, hates being frustrated, hates feeling the weight of like the pressure, right? Because it brings on
right,
that sense of powerlessness, disrespect, right? All of that. It's like once you give yourself permission to just feel frustrated in the moment, it kind of gives everyone else permission too to be where they're at. And then you're like, okay, it's not that they're disrespecting me. It's not that they're just being kids.
right.
They're kids being kids. And I'm allowed to be frustrated in this moment. So that's what I have found. That's why, like, I really, embody the work of emotional mastery. But I think emotional connection is even like a better term because you're not mastering something where, like, you're in complete control. We're actually not in control. None of us can control getting triggered.
Mhm,
We can do work and we can get less triggered over time, and the triggers could become less and like more calm, but triggers are triggers. We're all going to get and have uncomfortable emotions, but if you just give yourself permission to feel it, which is really just stop judging it and let it exist, right? Like just give that fear permission to be there. And what was surrounding your fear, because it's interesting when we went back, Sally, and we tapped on the first time you remembered, there was you had walked up a ladder
mhm,
and I remember there was the pressure that you saw everyone else do it, so you felt the pressure to do it even though you didn't want to. And I remember that, like, when I was like, that's it. There's something in that,
mhm,
like, she did something she didn't wanna do, right? Like, you went against that internal guidance and you did it anyway, and it was like you violated yourself, right? Like, you broke your own boundaries there. So
mhm.
it was layered. That fear was layered with, like, that.
Right, right, and looking back on that, because that happened as an adult. I climbed that ladder as an adult, which was my first memory of, like, the fear of when I really felt the fear of heights. I probably felt it maybe before, but in that moment, that's what I remembered, and I can look back now on that and really connect that to, of my feelings of allowing myself to be violated, as a kid. So there's so much connection for people that are listening that are not that as in tune with stuff we're talking about. These triggers that we have and the way we show up in the world today, or if we're a new entrepreneur, which definitely shows all of your stuff. I mean, it
Mhm.
really brings it all up front and center because
Mhm.
you're not in a job where you have other people. It's really just you pretty much. And you really have to start to face all of these things and they can be harsh, right? And I think that's why we're seeing so many, especially in the nurse coaching world, that people were already are starting to like on their healing journeys and are willing to dive in. But if you're not aware that these are issues, like the things that were showing up on my day to day we're all based on it's all old stuff for me, and even this fear of heights, when Amy just said that, it makes a direct correlation to me going along what I feel going along for things in my life that I really had no say in. but I went along, and so the shame and the guilt around that, and then that shows up in these other places. And so
Mm.
you don't connect those things immediately. The stuff doesn't get fixed immediately, or the awareness. I don't even want to say fixed, but the awareness. These journeys take a while, but they are profound when you start to uncover these things. And honestly, you just said that, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting because I never really correlated that, even though I do a lot of this work, right? Because when you're in it for yourself too, you're really in it. And so sometimes that's why, um, in every episode I've had so far talking about connection and what the importance of connection to yourself and doing your work and all the things, where I just want to say community, and I bring this up almost every time because it comes up, is community and um, having a guide if you're deciding to start to do this work, whether it's a therapist, a coach, breath work, whatever, you're starting to delve into, because everybody doesn't have to dive into the deep end, right? You can start slow and create safety in your body with stuff like this. But I think there's so much importance, and I know I've said this before and I repeat myself, but the pendulum swings like one way really far. And so there's all this work on, we have to connect to ourselves and do the work ourselves and go to our inner self. But there's so much magic in, and I always just like to remind people about the community piece of finding the person that works with you that can help guide you, or the group that you're safe in, whether it's a women's group, like when I talked to Krista about her mom's groups that she runs. I mean, it starts sometimes slow where you can start to connect back to yourself and then find the courage to go a little bit deeper. But I have to say, it's not a journey that you can do alone. I don't
Mhm.
think it's so important, and I always like to point that out, not as a sales thing. It's more about, like, I've been through this, you've been through this. We needed to find people to help us, because you still have moments. I just had a moment when you said that, that took me back, and was like, "Oh, that, yeah, that makes so much sense." Because when you're in it, sometimes it's hard. Even if you are a facilitator and doing the work, right? You need your people, that can take that perspective. And sometimes those aha moments come. So I just wanted to mention that because it's really beautiful. And the way you are able to guide women into their confidence and their courage. They come in, I'm sure, think just getting confidence. And then there is a whole deep
Mhm.
dive of like, oh, I can imagine, because they leave and they're like, holy crap, what just happened? But that is the way. Like, I'm 100% like that is the way. So yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about that, because we're definitely gonna go over on time. I knew this would happen with us. Um so hopefully you're okay with a little bit of extra time, but yeah, maybe bring us around, because your journey has been magical on your own self-discovery and how you're showing up in your life now, what's different, and how these women feel in your containers. They coming in for confidence, and you're bringing them deep to their places that some may not be expecting. I mean, I know that you're very honest about that. I don't mean like it's a bait and switch, but it's just, I didn't realize what I needed, right, when I was starting my healing journey. And
Yes.
so just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's this journey of, it's called interdependence, where we are learning how to, because we cannot survive alone. That's huge. We
Mhm.
cannot survive alone. We are wired socially to exist amongst community with other people. What's interesting, this was an interesting irony, is that when I started healing, I actually learned, oh, everything I always thought I needed from outside of me, I actually have it inside of me and can provide it for myself. And that was like the interesting irony of it. It's like, no, wait a minute. I do depend on others. I am a social animal. I do need others. And at the same time, everything, all the validation, all the approval, all of the shaking their heads, yes, and me not pissing someone off or saying something and triggering someone, like I never realized, like, oh, actually, that's not the way it is. I don't need that from other people.
Mhm.
What I need is true connection, is what I
Right.
actually needed. But it is a deep dive, it's a journey into the self to learn that you are actually the hero in your own story, that you do have this internal wisdom and guidance and confidence. Okay. It's not like this genetic trait that you don't have. You actually have it already. You just have to unlock it and start tuning into it and practicing it and building it. And in my program, Confidence Through Emotional Mastery, it is, my own body of work. It is dropping in and going deep. And I have learned to really be very transparent about what it is. It is not, I have refused people. Like if they're, I had one woman come in and she was like, "Oh my God, like I thought we were going to be doing like positive affirmations and like this is like shadow work you're doing with us." And like through those experiences, I have just learned and actually learned how to pre-frame it for the women now. So like when they come in, I let them know, hey, this is a deeper dive. Things are going to come up for you. You're going to get triggered. You're going to feel uncomfortable things. And that's an actual good thing. That means that we're unlocking things. Nothing comes out of you that isn't ready to be seen or heard. So that's how I frame it to them. And I just let them know that when something uncomfortable comes up, that means it's ready to be seen, it's ready to be heard, it's ready to be healed, it's ready to be let go of. That's all that that means. And there's a little tiny process of discomfort and grief in it. But then
Mhm.
comes the freedom.
Yeah.
Then comes them actually tapping into the truth of who they are, which maybe nobody knew before. Because right, if you would have said that to me a couple of years ago, I'd be like, who am I? Like, how do I even know who I am?
Mhm.
And really what I want to say is there is a little bit of a disruption process that happens, because when you're deciding who and learning who you truly are, who you thought you were, right? I remember I had a moment where I was like, I had this like weird moment where I was ready to let go of the anger. And I was like, but wait a minute, who am I if I'm not angry? I mean, I've been angry for 42 fucking years. So who the hell am I if I'm
I
not
know.
angry?
I know.
I did not know who I was, Sally. And I remember like just the tears came. And then within several moments later, it was like, well, what if you get to decide? What if you actually are loving, this thing
Mhm.
that you want to be? What if that's who you are? What if, you tune into those core values? If there's one exercise, like if you said like, Amy, what's the one thing you think like would make the world a better place? I would honestly say a core values exercise, learning what your core values are, and then deciding that you're going to live in alignment with those. And that would be it for me, because I continue to come back to them and I have the women do that in the group. And I just say, okay, now the first thing you're going to be faced with is realizing how you're not living in alignment with them.
Right.
And that's okay. Like you want to really start to decide that this is who you are. Because a lot of us, we admire these things in others. We admire others and we think they're so great and they have these qualities. And I want to say those are actually your core values. You just haven't owned those qualities within you yet, but you have them. You spot it, you got it. You just haven't flexed or built them.
Mhm.
And yeah, that really is the key to confidence. The other key to confidence that I would say is the disidentification process, understanding that you're so many different things, right, Sally? Like you're not just your anger, you're not just this big pain in the ass, you're not just this like annoyed woman walking around all the
Right.
time. You're not your anxiety. Like these are parts of you. These are emotions, these are thoughts, these are feelings. And just I'll say one of the most transformative things I've ever started doing was talking to myself in the person of like we. I literally say to myself in the mirror, like, okay, we are getting ready to go. And it's not that I'm crazy. It's actually because I'm so many different parts. Like
Yep.
I'm just inviting every part of my internal family system with me. So like the fear is coming, the confidence is coming,
I do
like It's all coming.
I do something similar, and I do in breath work too. I do this little thing. I'm not sure if I did it in Hawaii, but I invite people to step on the magic carpet. And now pretty much all the time I say if anyone has any other parts of you have joined in this session, invite them on. Like invite them on because some people have never even heard of that or thought about
Yeah.
that. Like everybody isn't in the self-development world, right? I might be breathing someone that for the first time. And so it starts to spark something of like, oh, interesting. And then it opens the conversation. But I do that too. I just learned how to start learning to embrace like all the parts of myself, some of them, because they kept me safe. A lot of them kept me safe and they served me. But I do remember when you were saying about that piece of letting go of the anger, like, who would I be? And I remember my husband, when I left my job, saying to me, like, "You were always I don't like, he couldn't understand, and I couldn't understand why I was struggling so much with anxiety and depression and wanting to leave my job and all the things that we sometimes struggle with. And because I was always the girl and the woman that got it done. Even in the most difficult situations, I got it done, and that is who he married. And so it was a big adjustment for me in myself and my journey, and then in him as my partner to be like I remember him saying, "Well, the person I married was always gonna work at the hospital, and she, like, barely anything ever affected her," but that's clearly wasn't true. But that was
Mm.
my persona,
Yeah.
and so I had this double, like, whammy of, like, how can I live not under that persona, but I was tired under that, like, I didn't wanna always be fighting and angry and the one that had to get it done. I wanted to be able to release to other people to do some of it and trust other people and find those things. So I remember that moment too for me. And people that are listening may come across that moment. And so there is a way through that. There is a way through that.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is the mask. We wear this
Mhm.
mask, we identify ourselves as this one thing, and then we judge ourselves as such. But we're so many different things. And confidence, there's so many different keys to it. But one of the keys is being able to ask for help, being able to
Right.
delegate, being able to admit that you're vulnerable and you're human and you're not perfect. And it's okay to ask for help. Asking for help is a real sign of emotional strength
Hmm.
and emotional intelligence and confidence. In addition to, another thing that we work on is accepting compliments. How many women are just deflecting? So it's so interesting how, like, we have an inner critic that beats us up, but then we have this inner critic that also doesn't let anything good come in either, right? It's like the other side to that coin. So something that I share, which may or may not be life changing, I know it was life changing for me, was that compliments are, there's a highest version of you. And even when you're identifying as, right, I'm the anxious worrier, or like I'm this angry person, right? There's other parts to you that other people are seeing, even when you're not.
Right.
And when somebody gives you a beautiful compliment and shares something, you inspired that compliment in them. There was a highest version of you that triggered something high in them, and they were vulnerable enough to share it with you. And how many of us, right? I just had a client who, she said, like, she went up, she did this presentation, and at the end of the talk, somebody came up to her and said, "Oh my gosh, like, you're so confident, I love your confidence." But meanwhile, her internal truth was like, she was so nervous. So again, I said, but there's still a confident part of you, and that's the part that that person is seeing, and they're reflecting it back to you. So just allowing compliments to be a reflection of the highest version of you, and maybe even allowing it in and saying, like, they're seeing something that I don't even
Hmm.
see in myself at this moment. But like, a lot of us are further along than we even give ourselves credit for. So like, that future version that we're trying to create ourselves to be, I always say, like, she already exists, and people are showing her to you through their compliments. So let those compliments come in. Like, and now I'm in a habit, and I'll just share this with the audience. If you want to do yourself a beautiful favor, is get in a habit of saying thank you when a compliment comes in. I'm putting that right in my heart. So, like, I have this exercise where we mindfully go in and we take the 3 most recent compliments that you've gotten and we put them in our bodies where truth lives, right? Because we're always finding what's uncomfortable in our body, but we can actually create more of what we want in our bodies too. And
I love that.
yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
I do too.
I love that. And yeah, this was something I definitely had to work on, and I still have to like remind myself. And so sometimes I'll just say, "Yep, I'm just going to take that in. Thank you."
Mm,
And it
I
was
know, isn't
so
that nice?
uncomfortable in the beginning because it was like, "Oh no, that they can't really be saying that about me." Or even when these women were saying like I'm a badass because that was a compliment from them. Like they see me as this person that maybe is confident. And and then I had to think about that, but I do now just try to say like, yeah, I'm going to take a minute and take that in instead of rejecting it and pushing it away because yeah, it is something. I like how you frame that. That's beautiful. So yeah.
Yeah,
So those
because
are
you are. There's a part of you, right? And I just want to reaffirm there is a part of you that is um, confident, courageous, that has clarity, that has compassion. Um, I know you're about to move, but I just want to say my biggest discovery and how I know that these things exist is because when I started doing my healing work, compassion came out of me. It was in there. I had never tapped into compassion before, ever. Like, and it just when I went in, it came up and out and it just affirmed to me like, "Oh my gosh, I have compassion within me." I always thought I was the most like compassionless person and it came from my upbringing. You know, I
Mhm.
had to harden up. I could not have compassion. Compassion would have killed me, right? With
Right.
what was happening in my home. So, like, I learned to be very distant and disconnected and compassionateless. But when I went in and realized I had it in me, I was like, oh, wow, like I have compassion in me. I have these things. Everybody does. I know they do. Even if they haven't tapped into them, they just haven't given it a safe space to come up yet.
I know, and when you see it come up, and I've seen this happen in my own family, and obviously my clients, and it really is beautiful when you see like this like emergence, almost like a flower starts to open.
Oh, it's
Something happened
nothing
with my
better.
partner the other day, and I was like, oh wow, it's so beautiful.
Mm,
Because it was something I know he didn't wanna do, and we kinda talked about it, but the old me would have been like, you should I would have, like, scolded him on it. But we just talked about it, and then he came to his own conclusion, and it's an uncomfortable thing for him, and he made a choice that was a really, really beautiful choice, and I didn't make a big deal about it, but it was really for me to see him come to that conclusion on his own with our conversation. It was literally so beautiful because he prides himself on not having compassion. Like, he's got a lot of protectors. So it was like a really beautiful moment, and I was like, "Oh, I know it's in there." It's in there,
mm,
and it's just harder for him to bring it out. And, yeah, and, we see it with our clients and other people. So, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because it really is important. You're doing such amazing work.
you too. And I love hearing that about your husband. I mean, there is no greater, I think as a coach, right? I know you can identify, but there is no greater when you see that turnaround with your client and you see their cognitive shift come all on their own, like it comes out of them.
Mhm.
And with your husband, or when you see that happen with a family member, like my children, I'm just like, there's no greater thing that excites me than that.
Yeah, and for people listening, like, when you start down these journeys, if you are feeling any of the stuff we're talking about, that rage or the sadness or the fear, all the things, and you haven't done any of this work or you have done the work. But I have to tell you, the one thing I've noticed is when you start working on yourself and you start to connect to all that inner wisdom and all that stuff that is inside of us, the ripple effects become huge. Because even
Mm.
though we're out there looking, listen, I went to therapy with my husband, partners therapy 3 years ago because I thought it was all him. Like, lo and behold, who knew that I had so much going on? But when you start to heal, and I'm sure you can agree with this, the ripple effects are amazing because your energy that you're showing up in your relationship, sometimes they do fall away, your relationships, but a lot of the times the ripple effect, because your energy is different, what you're bringing to the table is different. It isn't about giving in, it isn't about rolling over. It is about forgiveness with yourself and all of the things and the that you're taking your clients through. And we just show up at this highest version of ourselves. And then a lot of time, the people around us or the people that are affected in our sphere, things start to change. And it really is amazing to watch. And so, if anybody is listening and thinks about this or just wants to reach out, there are so many people like Amy out here doing this work, myself, and you have to find your person that you feel good with, right? It's all about that, being in the energy of people that you feel connected to, because there's a huge community. And I think as we continue to heal ourselves, we then continue to heal the world. And our connection just grows and grows. And I think it's such a beautiful thing that we need to do more and more in the world. And that is our radical responsibility, um, to take care of ourselves so that we can raise the consciousness of the world, because there's a lot going on. And I think this is so important. So thank you so much for sharing your journey today. I know I kept you over, and I promised myself I wouldn't do that, but I should have known better. And where there's so many other things we could talk about. So I will probably have you come back because I would love for you to come back and talk about the tapping and the work that you're doing with your new certification, because I think it's really great for people to hear what these specific modalities, because we didn't have time to get into that today. So I'd love to invite you back to talk about that stuff. So why don't you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you? And I will also, as always, include the show notes and Amy's information. But I know she is launching a new program. She might want to just give us a little shout out about that. And yeah, but you'll find all this stuff in all the places that you find the Connection Project.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that, Sally. And I just want to share with anyone who's listening, only you can go in and heal you. Only
Mhm.
you have your own medicine inside, and you do not need to do the journey alone.
Mhm.
Like, and I would say don't do it alone because you need that other person's right unending love, non-judgment, calm, centered, grounded nervous system to show you what's possible in that moment when you're like this. That really is the medicine
Yeah.
for it to come up and out, really. And, you know, I will forever have coaches and healers, and even sometimes, just let go of one, but I had two for quite a while, different things. So, yeah, now that I've learned the power of coaching, I just even love it so much more and see the value in it. So,
Yeah, me
there's
too.
that. Yeah, there's that. And I just want to say that thank you for letting me be on here, Sally. This is really beautiful. It's really nice to have these conversations. They're like my favorite
I know. I
conversations.
love it. I love it.
And yeah, and if you would love to connect with me and get to know me a little bit more, I would love to invite you into my free Facebook group entitled Confidence Through Emotional Mastery, where it's mostly nurses, coaches, entrepreneurs, all just doing that deeper work of creating confidence and courage while working through their fears and their doubts. I go live in there every other week and provide value. It's kind of like my version of a podcast.
It is.
Um, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I do, client interviews in there. So I would love to invite you into that. And I just happen to be in a launch for my group coaching space, Confidence Through Emotional Mastery. It starts April 22, and I am filling spots now. And for anybody that's listening, you will get a special discount just for mentioning this podcast if you get on a call with me and you decide to say yes to yourself. I want to say that it's a no obligation call. I will bring you to a place of clarity. I'm not trying to sell anyone on anything that they don't need. But if what you want is authentic confidence and you've tried all the other superficial kind of stuff out there and it's not working for you, then this would be probably aligns with exactly what you need. So just going to invite anyone to jump on a call with me as well.
And I'll remind everybody, all that info for Amy will be on. And this actually, we're actually recording on International Women's Day. So this is not
Mm.
obviously live, but this episode will be airing next week or the week after. So it will be soon. And yeah, so I'm gonna say it delayed, but happy International Women's Day. And yeah, what do we need more is our own confidence as women, right? And we're changing the world. And I love everything about it. So thank you for being here with me today and sharing so vulnerably your story. And that always helps people. The storytelling, I think, is the key to helping people see and connect with each other and their stories, and that we are not alone in this struggle that we think that we're alone in. And the more that we talk about it, I feel the more that we allow people to be vulnerable in their stories, and then they can start their healing journeys, which is can be transformational for them. So thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah. So to my audience, thank you again for popping on. I know this was a long episode. I hope you held on till the end. So much information to be had. And thanks again for connecting with us on the Connection Project. So many things. And I'm just going to say to my audience, if there's certain things that you want to hear, please DM me or drop it in. What you want me to hear and who you want me to talk to, because I love spreading this message of how important it is for us to connect to ourselves and connect to each other. This is the kind of world we live in, and sometimes we have forgot how important that is for us to survive and to really thrive in the day to day. So I love all of you, and I will talk to you next week.